My sister had a covert relationship with my fiance on the night of our engagement, but my family 5 years after I took her side, she's debt-ridden and pleading with me for $75,000. So I received a call recently from my mother, with whom I had not communicated in nearly 5 years, of claiming to require my assistance, given that my sister and her husband, having recently experienced a disaster for the man who is currently my sister's in reality. My spouse was meant to be my spouse previously. My sister, 27. Melissa, as I'll call her, is connected to the day of my fiancé Lucas's 29th birthday involvement. Lucas and I had shared from college, and he asked me to marry him after nearly 5 years of dating. He had planned a surprise party for us the evening of our engagement. And I can still clearly recall feeling superior. The globe, till almost 10 p.m. when I decided to enter the backyard. To receive a better response and capture my sisters were spread all around Lucas, sharing a kiss with such intensity that in the initial moments, they didn't even observe me, just standing there, talking door. I was astounded to see that he was causing me this. After over 5 years of harmony, as well as on the evening of our engagement, even more, when they eventually noticed me, they parted ways. Quickly, but it was already too late. I made a fleeing for it, getting into my car and driving as quickly as possible to the closest motel that I discovered I was breathing heavily since I was so taken aback by what I observed that I was attempting, in some way, analyze it and want it to be false. But after that, I got an SMS from Melissa expressed her regret. But she has feelings for both Lucas and it seems that this has been happening I was staying at the hotel for a very long time. I was in my room when I got the SMS, and I broke down more deeply than ever after Melissa Lucas texted me almost immediately after similar thing and claimed to have only suggested as he believed that if he devoted to me, he would have the ability to push Melissa out of his mind. It had failed, and it left him wanting. More than that, he informed me that it was more about them than it was about me, because they were aware that they were intended. I was merely a stand-in in the Lucas's path to ultimately meet Melissa. I stayed for a few days at the hotel. I made an effort to put my act together, since I was still in a wild state, and attempting to make me feel as though this was simply a nasty trick that life was pulling after nearly 4 days. I eventually went on me returning home, since I had things to gather my belongings, and returned to work, if I didn't wish to be fired upon my arrival, and I came home, to see that my family had been residing under the same roof as Lucas waiting on my return. It would nearly touching if it weren't for the conditions behind my departure. All of them had attempted to text me and get me to reply with vigor after I vanished, but I hadn't responded to every one of those texts, so it's unnecessary to claim that there was a great deal of confusion when I returned at last, and everyone survived a moment to hug me and express how happy they were going to see me. And Melissa even had the gall to approach me and offer me an enormous embrace while shedding tears when she spotted me. I was too lost to even respond to that by simply standing there like a motionless statue while everyone screamed surrounding me. And then, at last, after everyone, once I had collected myself, I cleared my throat and I told them I was returning, but I was only going to my belongings and permanently relocate. Lucas had been motionless there, word until then. But at the moment, I said that I intended to move out, told that I was unnecessary. To depart, since he had already prepared his items and intended to move in with Melissa. As of late, had been out in the open. In any case, my parents, my family, and my aunt, the younger sister of my dad, who has resided in the same home following her husband died, genuinely having a vast grinning, even though there was, at least, nothing to be happy about. Melissa, in my opinion, was standing next to Lucas in a strange side hug, and bitterly, but still looking at me grinning. I gave up trying to handle it and choose to question my family. Why the hell not? Did they even grin at all? Because as in my perspective, Melissa had just destroyed my engagement ring and took my after nearly 5 years of dating. There was nothing very endearing or humorous about it. At that point, my mother decided to speak up, and informed me they were unable to attend travel across time to alter the past, but they, and they may accept the future, felt that Melissa and the future, Lucas and I, acknowledged that it was the relationship that has developed as a result of cheating, and they did express regret for it things, but they also desired for me to comprehend and acknowledge that this was a good thing. Melissa expressed her sincere regret for removing my boyfriend from my life, yet she unavoidably fell in love with him. She wished she could have informed me sooner, earlier, so I didn't have to do the research this manner. But it seems they were extremely infatuated and desired to live forever between them. Then the pair of them kissed me directly in front of my mom was so bold as even to wipe a... I plucked a tear from her eye and said, convincing them that this wasn't meant to be emotive or nostalgic. And that's what they were doing disgusted me. Surprisingly, my relatives appeared irritated of my actions and informed me that I was being overly arrogant in the circumstances. Rather than feeling joy for my sister, I was putting my interests first, and they disapproved of the way I was acting. Shocked by their demeanor in this regard, and requested that they all leave my house at that very moment, I was unable to. I can't even begin to comprehend how they were protecting Melissa's and Lucas's completed while portraying me as the villain guy and pretend that I was exaggerating. My father stepped in and warned me against behave as though you're a youngster, because these occur, and I ought to accept it with grace. He desired for me to rejoice that my sister had, in the end, discovered her soulmate of feeling envious of her genuinely all behaving irrationally. And I couldn't take it any longer, so I just responded, "Screw it, I'm packing it in my room." Some of my belongings, and departed once more, without even waiting or chatting to them, to pay attention to them, even while they cried out my name and advised me not to go. I ran out of things to say to them, since it was very evident to me that they were more concerned with Melissa and her more significant than that of me, or perhaps if they were so aware of what was good and evil. Engrossed in attempting to defend what Melissa had carried out, that they entirely, I neglected to remember that I was a human. With genuine emotions as well afterward, day when my relatives attempted to get in touch with me few times, but I never got back to, as I didn't believe I owed them it to them after a few weeks. Even got Melissa's invitation and Lucas's wedding, which I turned down. All of the mutual buddies that both Lucas and I had turned down the invitation to a wedding and support for me, and a few family members who realized the reality and declined to speak with my relatives after they discovered how they had taken care of me following the party for 5 years now, and I eliminated them from my life. Occasionally, they attempted to wrangle their way back into my life by sending me well wishes either my birthday or the first of the year, But I disregarded them. I didn't even block any of, even if I did take them out of my friend and following lists. However, since I have an open account that they may view, what I desired and what I was doing, I desired both for them to see and for them to be aware that I was living a wonderful life and continue to burn with envy was trivial, but I did the best I could follow up on how they betrayed and misled me. Until recently, I hardly knew anything. Of their activities during the previous a few years ago, my mother called, roughly 4 days ago, from a phone number. I wasn't preserved when I responded to the phone and saw that my mother was on the other end. I tried right away to hang up, but she pleaded with me fervently for just a chance to speak with me, since they were desperate for aid, and I consented to talk to her for perhaps a few minutes, but only since her voice sounded so agitated, and my humanity prevented me from turning away. At that exact moment, she informed me that Melissa and Lucas have launched their own company, of their own a few years prior. Nevertheless, it was severely faltering, and their investors were all retreating as a result of not turning a profit at all. Therefore, they took out further loans, but despite that didn't benefit their company, and they were deeply in debt, with all the sharks were chasing them, being pursued by all of them, from their workers to their investors, and those from whom they had borrowed funds. Mother was aware of my opulent lifestyle, and had the means to assist them out, so she had come to me as a final resort, and begged me to assist them, helping them out by giving them a loan so they could settle their bills, and there was the tiny sum that she was requesting to me, because she was approximately $75,000, desired anything from me so she could assist. I asked Melissa why she and Lucas were out. Melissa was phoning me, wasn't she? Why was she forcing my mother to help her? Talked to me on her account so that my mother informed me that Lucas and Melissa didn't even be aware that she was seeing me for assistance, as they had given her harsh directions not to come near me. Because I suppose we can all still recall precisely what occurred 5 years prior. Melissa did not. Nothing you wanted me to know about. Willing to accept my assistance, but my mother knew of no one else who could have that amount of cash and would provide it to them wherever possible in a few months, had already elapsed when Melissa and Lucas was having trouble simply placing food on my parents' table. Were they assisting them in every way possible? Even the Lucases attempted to provide them with everything they could have done, but it was simply insufficient, and even they had to be capable of sustaining themselves in the long run, so it was not feasible for them to just donate all of the money they would preserved over time, mainly because, since the majority of my family was retired, were Lucas' parents, which is the reason my mother, who had run out of choices, had called me and asked for my assistance, could support them financially, but I didn't want to. Melissa was correct for not contacting me to request assistance. They were no longer able to make any requests that I make on the day that I told Mom that I'd been unfaithful to me, was unable to assist them. And even if I had, my mother sounded rather upset, wouldn't she? And informed me that I was being harsh, that I ought to consider my family. Informed her that Lucas and Melissa hadn't pondered over me when they experienced that affair, and my family didn't believe it either. Concerning me, as they were endorsing there were currently 2 of them, so there was need for me to consider them as well. I had put forth a lot of effort to earn the job, where I am right now, and I had no intention of go ahead and give 2 folks who didn't even merit it at the time. My mother started sobbing over the phone and informed me that she never thought I would mature, become so self-centered, and asserting that my sister's spouse would ultimately arrive in major problems if I didn't assist them, claimed that it was simply too awful, but I couldn't assist them, so I hung up. My mother has been sending me since then numerous texts, pleading with me every hour to take a second look and consider my sister. For after declaring that this was not the moment for small-time retaliation, and that the issue Melissa's condition was grave, thus I would have if I hadn't assisted her right now. Regret it when she's older and more mature. Insane. And I'm at a loss for words to her. As I would want not to feel like, here, the villain is either Ida or not supporting my sister monetarily after 5 years ago, my fiance was stolen by her. 1. So I at last disabled my relatives. Hadn't taken such action sooner, since I wanted them to be aware of my activities and feel envious of me, and the fact that I believed that completely cutting them off, it might be something I come to regret. Should something untoward happen to things, but these days, I don't care. I should have taken them down 5 years ago. I have no idea why I kept these at all, around for such a long time. That's what I was being petty by not helping my sister. Petty isn't out right now. It's just it would be sensible if they had already squandered countless amounts of money. And I'm confident that even if I grant them the funds, they won't be able to pay it back at this time. And $75,000 is a substantial sum. Therefore, I may be prosperous, but that doesn't imply I can give up that amount of money. And I do not anticipate receiving it back. If this is a close my friend with whom I was assisting, I still would anticipate receiving the money back here. These aren't close individuals. Neither my loved ones nor I can anticipate them to reimburse me. So there's not the rationale behind my helping them. Is as easy as that. I shared it with a few of my pals about this as well to obtain their view on it, and they concurred that I would acted morally by declining to provide. They took the money without even feeling it. Of retaliation, but primarily because it is utterly ridiculous and unwise to even anticipate my assistance when they were those who had deceived me in the past. But whatever. My mom has barred she can't get in touch with me. To Gail, I no longer have anything to trip me. Concerning the update, hello everyone. So today, a truly significant event occurred. I was in the office when I got a call from my neighbor informed me about a pair who were outside my house yelling for me to emerge so we may speak them. According to what my neighbor said, appeared somewhat bizarre and had been for approximately an hour, yelling at the door, defiantly refusing to go. I requested a characterization of them, yet deep down, She informed me that she already knew who it was. When they looked, it was evident that I was going to meet Melissa and Lucas, my neighbor. When I returned home, informed me that I had to return and handle this as a result of her lack of thinking that these two had any noble intentions, and I agreed when Melissa and Lucas were involved. That we were discussing. They were able to never be too much, so I gave her my gratitude and got behind the wheel to head home. As soon as possible, since I couldn't risk them entering my home at any expense, I fortunately there in roughly 15 minutes and observed them as they attempted to pick the lock on my house to gain entry. I parked in front of my door and home and inquired as to what the devil they believed they were working. So I attempted to make an instant police call, but Lucas was lightning fast, and he hurried, came over to me, and took the phone from Melissa, came over to shake my hand as well. and informed me they were only here to smoke, and they had no desire for anything from not right now. At least I stated them to expedite it, and then dinner and said that that they shouldn't anticipate an invitation from me within. So whatever they needed to discuss regarding how to be talked about therein, the yard appeared to be acceptable to them, which was relief for me, because I really didn't believe it would be beneficial. The concept of bringing those two inside the quarters were attractive already. It was antagonistic, so I was trying to figure out what to anticipate, given that they had expressed a desire to anything from me. Melissa began speaking and conveyed to me what our mother had said regarding the call, and how I would disregarded her later texts and even blocked them all after telling them me that the manner I was acting was incredibly unjust, and that 5 years have passed since then. I ought to be past it by now. Instead, by this point, I was turning to such absurd and theatrical gestures to obtain a small amount of focus on my family. She claimed to have been deeply offended due to IID's refusal to assist them, and she was here to speak with that. She told me that she had succeeded to set up the funds temporarily, but there was an outstanding possibility that she might require more going forward, and since she had liquidated their home and all of their jewelry this time to receive the funds, he couldn't repeat it. So she needed to be aware that she had options. Depend on me and ask for my assistance when she required it, I informed her. But she couldn't. Thus, she shouldn't rely on me at all. Everything in any situation, because I detest her and her spouse intensely. I also told her that since I was so furious. I had to use a lot of self-control to not struck her right now. So it would be best for them to depart. Simply Lucas was so bold as to claim that they remained in place until I signed a documentation that would attest to my after that. Offer them money anytime they wouldn't even need it. Be enforceable. If I had to sign it under duress, I'm relatively sure there are laws against it, and they also need to be crazy if they genuinely believed that they could coerce me into signing. Something similar, which I informed both of them to go immediately, and Melissa pushed me, telling me I had to assist them. Thus, it appears that I owe them this, as they were my family, and I was unable to flee from my obligations like this. I was taken aback by her. Indeed shoved me, and I wanted to slap her, but I restrained myself. That as matters would only worsen. If I choose to use violence instead, I would seize my phone, which was lying on the ground when Lucas forcefully removed it from I grabbed hold of it and fled, climbing as fast as I could into my car, and left without even stopping to drive. I hadn't checked my rearview mirror. Skipped starting the engine when I'd abandoned the vehicle, leaving it running, and I had a copy of it quickly. A head start on them, as they were not foolish enough to pursue me on, so they stood there at my foothouse, which was regrettable, because as soon as I got far enough away I decided to contact the police and inform them of the situation. And after that, I returned to my residence right before of time, as the authorities had previously reached in 20 minutes. So I filled them, taking note of everything. They detained and removed Melissa and Lucas. I was aware of that. The accusations were not very severe, and they would escape with relative ease, although it was worthwhile nonetheless, as at least they were removed, and I spared to squander my time with them any longer. It's several hours have passed since then, and I have not heard from any members of my family, which is odd, because I had discovered the thought by now, one of them would have attempted to reach me from another statistics, but they haven't. Therefore, I'm assuming that they're either simply exhausted and won't make an effort to get under my skin once more, or are they just waiting, biding their time and pulling away so they may message me later when things have improved. Update 3 is a little less stressful, so the approximately a week ago was the last update, and I genuinely began to think that my family wasn't going to be a bother. Me once more because I'd contacted the police on Lucas and Melissa, but I was mistaken. Even so, it did not prevent them from bothering me once more. But this time, it was my parents who arrived at my residence, requesting that they speak with me for a little minute yesterday, and they appeared far less arrogant and conceited in contrast to Melissa and Lucas. So my mother began, and I allowed them in. Sobbing almost immediately after she went inside and apologized to me that she had ever used Melissa's, my father informed me, side over mine. Following their discovery of Melissa and Lucas being taken into custody due to their actions, additionally, that they were unable to bring themselves to observe them in the same manner and had determined that they would be sliced off, my mother kept crying for the duration of her stay here. As my father clarified, they were. I apologized for supporting Melissa in the time when I was indeed the one doing the victim, even though I claimed to have thanked them for, at last, making it to their senses. Yet it was also at that moment tiny and come too late for things to better. I was accustomed to surviving on now, on my terms, and I was unwilling to go returning to prioritizing my family above oneself therefore, even though I valued their stay, and I honestly couldn't apologize to you. Assure them I'd get to work on this partnership, since I didn't feel that it would be useless to attempt to restore a connection that has already been destroyed, even when it's with my folks' parents. At that time, they made a small protest and mentioned that if we could desired to, but that's just where the issue was, that I was no longer motivated to. All I wanted was to be by myself, and I expressed my respect for them. I attempted, but it felt like I was done here. It was a little let down, but in the end, after they left, they asked whether I could still, at the very least, unblock them to let them in. I've unblocked my parents on touch, which, it feels strange, but that's it.